I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. My son's name flashed on the screen, a call I always pick up. His voice was flat, almost rehearsed. "Mom, we moved you to the nursing home. Everything's signed. You'll be safer there." For a second, the room fell silent. Even the ticking wall clock felt louder than my own heartbeat. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He didn't wait for my answer. He didn't even ask how I felt. He just added, "Pack a small bag. We'll take you tomorrow morning," and hung up, just like that. A whole lifetime of raising a child reduced to a 2-sentence eviction. But what they didn't know, what nobody in my family knew, was that I still owned the entire estate. Every house, every acre, every dollar they thought they controlled was still legally mine. And that was the moment everything began to change. When my son, Marcus, and his wife, Danielle, walked into my living room that afternoon, they didn't even knock. They came in like people who already believed they had authority over my life. Danielle carried a folder pressed tight against her chest, and Marcus kept glancing at me, the way people look at a fragile box they're afraid might break in their hands. "Mom, sit down," Marcus said, like he was talking to one of his children. I was already sitting. He sighed, placed both hands on his knees, and avoided my eyes. "We made a decision. For your own good." Danielle stepped forward, her perfume hitting me before her voice did. "You've been struggling," she said slowly, like she was reading from a script. "It's too much for you to live alone. So we moved you to a nursing home, a good one." My fingers tightened on the armrest. "You moved me?" Marcus nodded. "The room is ready. We signed the paperwork. You'll be safer there. And honestly," he finally looked at me, "this house is too much for you." That house, the one I scrubbed, painted, repaired, and protected for 40 years, the house where I raised him, the house his father built with his own hands. Danielle opened the folder and slid a stack of papers toward me. "Everything's done. All you have to do is pack a small bag. Clothes, medication, essentials. We'll drive you tomorrow morning." I didn't touch the papers. I didn't say a word, because in that moment, I understood. This wasn't concern. This wasn't love. This was a relocation, a removal, a quiet erasure. Danielle crossed her arms. "It's for the best. You're not as sharp as you used to be." Marcus added, "And you forget things, Mom. Bills, dates, paperwork. You even left the stove on once." I hadn't, and they knew it. I tried to steady my breathing, but the air felt thick, heavy. My own son, the child I worked double shifts to feed, couldn't even look at me without seeing inconvenience. He leaned forward. "Mom, this is final. The director of the home expects you. We already made the deposit." Deposit. Like I was a package. I asked quietly, "And who gave you permission to sign anything in my name?" Danielle lifted her eyebrow, almost proud. "We handled it. Someone had to. You should thank us." Thank them for throwing me away. I stared at the papers. Bold signatures, photocopied IDs, forms with my name forged in shaky imitation. Marcus stood. "We'll come early tomorrow. Just be ready." Danielle added, "And don't make this difficult. We're doing the responsible thing." Then they turned around and left. Just like that. No hug, no reassurance, not even a backward glance. The door clicked shut and the silence in the house felt like a final verdict. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know what Harold left for me. They didn't know the one truth that would rewrite everything. And that truth was about to tear their little plan apart. My name is Evelyn Mae Carter, 68 years old, born and raised in Savannah, Georgia. People who meet me for the first time always think I'm quiet, soft-spoken, gentle. And they're right. Partly. I was raised in a church-going neighborhood where you learned to keep your tone steady even when your heart was on fire, where respect wasn't just taught, it was expected, where mothers carried the weight of entire families on their backs, smiling through storms nobody else knew about. I worked as a CNA for 32 years in a small community hospital. the kind of place where you knew every patient's grandbaby's name. I changed sheets, lifted bodies twice my size, held hands through death, prayed with strangers, and went home every night smelling like antiseptic and exhaustion. But I loved that job. I loved helping people. I loved knowing I made someone's pain smaller, even if my own life felt heavy sometimes. I married my husband, Harold, when I was 25. He was tall, quiet, and calm in a way that settled my spirit. He had the kind of voice that made you feel like the world wasn't falling apart, even when it was. We didn't have much money. Back then, nobody in our neighborhood did. But Harold knew how to build things. He could fix a roof with half a box of shingles and a prayer. He could stretch $1 until it begged for mercy. And he worked every job he could find: carpentry, landscaping, deliveries, anything that kept the family afloat. Together we raised our only child, Marcus, my whole world for so long. I used to pack his lunch every morning before my shift. Peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, sometimes a little note folded into the napkin. Be kind today. Help someone who needs it. I love you. Little things, but I thought they mattered. When he was 9, Harold and I bought our first rental house, a tiny yellow place with crooked shutters and a porch that dipped on the left side. We renovated it together on weekends. Harold did the heavy work, and I painted every room with my own hands. That house was the start of everything. Over the next 20 years, we bought 2 more properties, then a small acre of land passed down from Harold's grandmother. We turned those places into our retirement plan, into our safety net, into our legacy. We never told many people about our assets. We quietly saved, quietly invested, quietly built a future that would protect our family long after we were gone. We kept every receipt, every deed, every contract in a metal box under our bed. Some people brag loudly about money they don't have. We stayed silent about the money we did. But life doesn't care how carefully you build something. Harold got sick in late 2019, liver failure, the kind you don't recover from. He went from strong to fragile in a matter of months. I slept in a chair beside his hospital bed more nights than I slept at home. The day he passed, it felt like someone had pulled a nail out of the center of my life, and the whole structure began to shake. I grieved quietly. Too quietly, maybe. Marcus told me I needed to take better care of myself. Danielle told me I looked tired all the time. Neither of them ever asked what I needed. Neither of them sat with me the way I sat with Harold. After the funeral, I slipped into a fog I didn't know how to climb out of. I forgot appointments, skipped meals, stood in the kitchen staring at the same spoon for 2 minutes straight without knowing why. Not because I'd lost my mind, but because grief makes the world blurry. It slows you down. It presses on your lungs. It rearranges you. And maybe that was the moment they decided I was weak enough. Because slowly, and I didn't notice it at first, Marcus and Danielle began inserting themselves into my affairs. Let us handle your mail, Mom. You don't need to worry about your bills. We'll manage the house repairs for you. At first, I thought it was kindness. Then I realized it was control. I trusted them too much. I let them take over small things, not knowing they were mapping the whole terrain of my life, not knowing they were waiting for the right moment to take the big things too. And I have to admit something, even though it hurts. I raised Marcus to be kind, but I also raised him to believe his mother would always be there to rescue him. I bailed him out of debt more times than I can count. Credit cards, student loans, parking tickets, that business idea he swore would take off. I paid $3,200 once to stop his car from being repossessed. I covered a $5,800 medical bill when he didn't have insurance. I even helped Danielle start her online boutique, which she abandoned after 6 months. Every time I told myself, that's what mothers do. Every time they thanked me, lightly, quickly, then moved on like it was nothing. I didn't realize I was teaching them something dangerous, that my love would never run out, that my money would never run out, that my patience would never run out. When Harold died, they saw an opening, a crack in my stability, a woman living alone in a house too big, with more grief than strength, more memories than defenses. And grief makes you easy to misjudge. They thought I was fading. They thought I was softening. They thought I wouldn't fight back. But grief doesn't make everyone weak. Sometimes grief shows you exactly what and who you must protect yourself from. They didn't understand that I wasn't unraveling. I was remembering the woman I used to be, remembering the life Harold and I built with sweat and long nights and prayers whispered into paint cans and toolboxes. They didn't understand that inside my silence, a storm was forming. The house I live in isn't just a building. It's the only place on this earth where every version of me has ever lived. My 25-year-old newlywed self, still learning how to cook without burning rice. My 30-year-old self, rocking baby Marcus at 3 a.m, praying he'd sleep. My 45-year-old self, celebrating the day Harold and I made the final payment and the house officially became ours. And my 66-year-old self, holding Harold's hand as he took his last breath. Every wall carries a memory. Every board carries a footprint of my life. People talk about property values and equity. They talk about interest rates and taxes. But the value of this house cannot be measured on paper. Harold built the porch himself. Every step creaks in a different tone. He used to joke that the house was singing. I can still hear him humming as he hammered in the rails, sweat dripping down his forehead in the July heat. In the backyard, there's a magnolia tree we planted our second year of marriage. It was a scrawny little thing then, barely taller than Marcus when he was in kindergarten. Today, it stands as tall as a 3-story building, heavy with white blossoms each spring, smelling like sugar and memory. Harold picked out that tree because magnolias survive storms better than most. Just like us, he said once, brushing dirt off his jeans. Inside the living room, there's a small crack under the window from where Marcus threw a baseball too hard at age 11. He cried because he thought he'd be in trouble. Harold laughed, fixed the crack, and said, "A house with no scars ain't a house that's lived in." In the second bedroom sits Harold's guitar, the one he bought at a pawn shop for $42 back in 1983. The wood is chipped in one place, and one of the tuning pegs sits slightly crooked. But I can still hear him playing it on summer evenings, singing "Stand By Me" in that warm voice I fell in love with. In the attic are boxes of memories, our wedding photos, Marcus's kindergarten drawings, old Thanksgiving decorations, receipts from the renovation we thought we couldn't afford, but did anyway. And tucked inside one of those boxes are the blueprints Harold drew by hand for the rental homes that would later become our investment properties. Those rental homes, the estate as the deed calls it, were our life's work. The first one, the little yellow house with crooked shutters, took us 2 whole summer months to fix. The second house was old, stubborn, full of termites, and the roof leaked like a broken faucet. But we saved it. We brought it back to life, just like we brought each other back, over and over, through trouble and hope and exhaustion. The third rental house sits near a playground, and I still remember painting its front door bright blue. Marcus was 13, holding the paint tray, grumbling about the heat, but he painted half those walls himself, even if he pretended he hated it. He grew up in those houses too, the estates he now wants to take from me. Behind them, on the far end of our land, there's an acre plot passed down through Harold's grandmother. It's the kind of land people forget to appreciate. Wild, quiet, filled with tall grass and dragonflies in summer. But that land holds history. It holds struggle. It holds the fingerprints of ancestors who worked under a sun they didn't choose, praying for a future they'd never see. That acre is sacred to me, to my family's story, to who I am. So when Marcus and Danielle told me I'd be leaving all this behind, when they told me I'd be safer in a nursing home, when they assumed these walls meant nothing to me, it wasn't just a betrayal, it was an erasure. They didn't understand, or maybe they didn't care. what it means to take a person from the place where their whole life lives. They didn't see my home. They saw money, assets, an investment portfolio waiting to be harvested. They didn't walk those rental homes with Harold at night, checking broken porch lights, fixing loose boards, making sure tenants felt safe. They didn't hear him say, "One day these places will take care of you, Evie," and now they wanted to take them for themselves. Losing a house is not like losing an object. A house holds your past, your identity, your dignity. It holds the proof that you worked, you dreamed, you loved, you struggled, and you survived. And when someone tries to take that from you, especially someone you birthed, it splits something inside you. A quiet tear, deep and tender, like a seam coming undone. For days after Harold died, I would sit on the porch and listen to the neighborhood kids playing outside. I would close my eyes and imagine Harold walking around the corner with 2 sodas in his hand saying, "You look thirsty." But he never came. And in that hole, that emptiness, I clung to this home the way a drowning person clings to driftwood. This house is not a possession. It is my anchor, my last piece of Harold, my last piece of myself before grief hollowed me out. Marcus and Danielle thought they were removing a burden. They thought they were doing me a favor. They thought I would quietly accept what they had scripted for me. But people like me, women who have spent decades swallowing pain, carrying families, building through storms, we don't break that easily. They saw a house. I saw a lifetime. They saw assets. I saw love. They saw an opportunity. I saw betrayal. And most of all, they saw weakness. They had no idea how wrong they were. 3 years before Harold passed, on a late autumn afternoon, he called me into the bedroom. It was a quiet day, the kind of day where the air feels heavier than usual and the shadows stretch differently across the floor. He sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders slightly hunched, hands clasped together in a way I had only seen once before, the day his mother died. "Evie," he said, patting the spot beside him. His voice sounded steady, but his eyes told a different story, a story he hadn't decided whether to speak aloud. I sat down slowly. He took a long breath, then another, and finally he said, "There's something I need to give you." He reached toward the nightstand, opened the drawer, and pulled out a thick brown envelope sealed with tape. The kind of envelope people use for things that shouldn't be bent, torn, or questioned. I frowned. "What's that?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he held the envelope with both hands, like it weighed more than paper should, like it carried something alive inside, something that could change the direction of a life if opened. "This," he said carefully, "is for when I'm not around anymore." My throat tightened. "Harold, don't talk like that." But he shook his head. "Evie, listen." His tone left no room to interrupt. He handed me the envelope, but didn't let go, even when my fingers wrapped around it. His grip tightened slightly, almost as if he was passing a torch, not just a document. "If something ever happens, and someone tries to take what we built, this is your protection, your proof, your shield." Those words lodged themselves into my memory like a nail driven straight into wood. I stared at the envelope, confused and frightened. "What do you mean, someone?" I asked softly. He looked away for a moment, eyes drifting toward the window where the magnolia tree cast a lace of shadows on the wall. "You know our boy," he said. My chest tightened. "Marcus? What about him?" Harold rubbed the back of his neck, an old habit whenever he needed to say something hard. "He's a good child, but he's easily pulled, easily swayed. And Danielle—" His lips pressed together. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I knew exactly what he meant. Danielle had always been charming. Sweet when she wanted something, cold when she didn't. The kind of woman who complimented you while measuring the value of your jewelry. The kind who smiled at you but watched your wallet. Harold had seen it early, much earlier than I had. "That girl thinks life owes her something," he said with a sigh. And she thinks you owe her even more. I swallowed. Harold, they wouldn't. He lifted a hand gently, stopping my denial. Promise me you'll open this only if you have no other choice. Not out of fear, not out of panic, but when someone tries to take what's yours, what's ours, and they think you don't know any better. I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. Honey, why are you saying this? You're not dying. He gave me a sad smile, the kind a man gives when he already knows more than he's willing to admit. I'm not dying today, he whispered. But one day I will. And when that day comes, I need to know you won't be alone. I won't leave you defenseless. He brought my hand to his lips and kissed it, lingering there. A long, slow kiss that felt like a goodbye and a promise wrapped together. Then he added, don't open it until you need it most, and when you do, don't hesitate. I nodded, even though part of me refused to understand. I tucked the envelope into the bottom of my dresser drawer later that night, behind folded sweaters and scarves. For months, I couldn't bring myself to look at it. It felt too heavy, too final, too much like an admission that Harold was preparing for a world where he no longer existed. And then he passed. The night after his funeral, I opened the dresser drawer and stared at the brown envelope. My fingers brushed against it, but I didn't pull it out. I wasn't ready. I didn't want to open something that felt like his last instructions, his last breath, his last act of love. So I closed the drawer, and over the months that followed, grief swallowed everything. I forgot appointments. I forgot meals. I forgot why Harold had looked so concerned that afternoon. And slowly, the envelope slipped from my daily thoughts and sank into the depths of the drawer, covered by the weight of mourning. But Harold's words never truly left me. Not really. They lived in the back of my mind like a quiet bell that only rang when danger was near. So on the day Marcus and Danielle handed me those forged papers, on the day they told me I'd be moved out of my own home, on the day they declared my life too much work for them, that bell finally rang. It rang so loudly I could almost hear Harold's voice whispering, "Evie, it's time." That night, long after the house had gone still, I walked into the bedroom. The moonlight spilled across the floor, silver and soft. I opened the dresser drawer with trembling hands, pushed aside the sweaters, and there it was, the brown envelope, untouched, waiting, exactly where Harold placed it. And for the first time since he died, I felt him with me again. I picked it up gently, pressed it to my chest, and whispered into the quiet room, "Please let this be what I need." Then I opened it. I sat on the edge of the bed, the brown envelope resting in my lap like a sleeping animal I was afraid to wake. The room felt colder than usual, though the heater hummed softly in the hallway. Maybe it was the weight of the moment. Maybe it was Harold's absence sitting beside me like a ghost with warm hands and heavy warnings. My fingers slid under the sealed flap. The tape resisted at first, stiff, stubborn, like it didn't want to reveal what had been hidden for so long. But it finally gave way with a dry tear, a sound that felt too loud in the quiet bedroom. Inside were 3 documents and a handwritten letter. I laid them out on the blanket, afraid to touch them, afraid not to. The first page was a property deed update, signed and notarized 9 months before Harold died. My breath caught in my throat. Every rental home, the yellow house, the blue door home near the playground, the old termite one we saved, all 3 were listed under my name only. Not Harold and Evelyn Carter. Not the Carter Family Trust. Just me. Full ownership. Unshared. Undisputed. I blinked hard, thinking maybe the grief had blurred my vision. But no. The lettering was clear, the signature unmistakably Harold's. His careful, steady handwriting that always looked like a man trying to make sure the world understood him exactly. My hands trembled as I reached for the second document. This one was thicker, a multi-page notarized statement titled, Last Will and Testament of Harold James Carter, updated March 14, 2020. I inhaled slowly, bracing myself. The first paragraph confirmed what I already knew. Harold left everything to me, not to Marcus, not split between family, not shared across heirs, everything. But the next paragraphs, those were the ones that changed everything. Harold had arranged a protective clause, something I didn't even know existed, that automatically transferred all decision-making power, all financial control, all property rights to me alone if he passed, and if any relative attempted to force, coerce, or manipulate living arrangements, care decisions, or signatures. My heart thudded against my ribs. Harold had seen this coming. He had built a legal shield before the danger ever arrived. The clause was written so plainly, so decisively, that no judge in the state of Georgia could argue against it. It even mentioned that any forged signature or coercive move to take over care authority would automatically void any claim Marcus or Danielle believed they had. A protection spell, written in ink. I pressed my palm to my forehead as the room swayed around me. This wasn't just caution. This was foresight. This was love shaped like armor. I picked up the third document, a letter from Harold's longtime attorney, Mr. Carter, no relation. It stated that the estate had been quietly transferred and secured, with monthly rental income directed into a private account under my sole access. No shared banking, no contingent beneficiaries, no loopholes. My lips parted in a whisper I didn't intend. So they never had anything, not really. Marcus and Danielle had been living in one of the rental homes, the Blue Door one, assuming it belonged to them through Harold. They assumed they were managing the estate. They assumed the income and assets were theirs to expect, inherit, or claim. But Harold had locked every door, sealed every window, and handed me the only key. I finally reached for the letter. Harold's handwriting flowed across the page, calm and steady. The way he spoke when storms rolled in, when he was preparing us both for something he hoped wouldn't happen, but knew probably would. Evie, it began, if you are reading this, then someone has tried to take advantage of you, and you know exactly who I mean. My eyes filled before I could stop them. I love our son, but he listens to the wrong voice. A voice that values comfort more than character, a voice that sees your kindness as weakness, and that makes him dangerous even if he doesn't fully understand what he's becoming. Danielle. He meant Danielle. He had seen the cold glint in her eyes the way I had pretended not to. This envelope protects you, not from strangers, from the people who will claim they know what's best for you when what they really want is control. A tear fell onto the page. I wiped it quickly as if I could undo the stain. Use these papers only when necessary, but if the time comes, don't hesitate. Your life is yours. Your home is yours. Our work is yours, and no one, not even blood, has the right to take it. He ended with a line that undid me completely. I may not be there to lift the hammer, but this is the last thing I built for you. I sat there for a long time, letting those words settle into my bones. The papers lay before me like a shield Harold forged from beyond his grave. Every signature was a message. Every clause was a warning. Every page was a promise. Marcus and Danielle had walked into my home, thinking they held all the power. They thought they had cornered me. They thought they had already won. But they didn't know the truth. They didn't know the estate was mine. They didn't know the law was on my side. They didn't know Harold had prepared for this moment years before they showed their true colors. And as I gathered the documents back into the envelope and held it tightly in my hands, a warmth spread through my chest. Not the warmth of forgiveness, but the warmth of clarity. They thought they were taking my life away, but Harold had given it back to me. The morning after I opened Harold's envelope, The sun rose in thin, pale streaks through my curtains. Soft light, the kind that usually warms a room. But that morning it felt colder, like the light itself was holding its breath. I stood in the kitchen making tea when I heard a car pull into the driveway, not a gentle stop, a confident, almost triumphant one. Marcus. My son walked in without knocking again, jangling his keys like he owned the place. Danielle followed a second later, swinging her purse over her shoulder with the swagger of someone who believed the world had finally fallen neatly into her hands. "Morning, Mom," Marcus called too cheerfully. "Hope you're packed. The nursing home called to confirm everything. They said your room is ready." Your room. As if I were checking into a hotel. He walked around the living room like a landlord inspecting property, touching things casually, like they already belonged to him. Danielle didn't even greet me. She wandered straight toward the hallway and peeked into my bedroom with wide, possessive eyes. I watched her scan the space, the closet, the dresser, the nightstand, as if mentally cataloging what she planned to keep, what she planned to sell, and what she planned to throw away. When she turned back to me, she smiled, a thin, triumphant smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can leave some things here, Evelyn," she said lightly. "We'll sort everything out once you're settled." Settled, a word people use for furniture, not for mothers. I set my teacup down slowly. "I haven't packed anything." Marcus let out a frustrated sigh like I was a stubborn child refusing to get dressed for school. "Mom, please don't make this hard. This is happening whether you're ready or not." He came closer, lowering his voice. "It's for your own good." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the lie was so large it barely fit inside the room. Danielle chimed in, leaning against the doorframe with her arms folded. "We're trying to help you, Evelyn. Living alone isn't safe at your age. And this house, honestly, it's too much responsibility. You should relax. Let us handle things now." Let us handle things. Handle the estate. Handle the rental income. Handle the deeds they believed were already theirs. They had no idea how close they were to losing everything. Marcus reached down and grabbed the small suitcase from beside the couch, the one I used for weekend trips to visit my sister before she passed. He held it up and shook it lightly. "Seriously? You didn't pack anything? Not even medication?" I kept my voice calm even. "I didn't ask to go anywhere." Danielle clicked her tongue and stepped toward me. "Evelyn, please, don't make us feel guilty. We're doing all the work. Scheduling, signing, arranging." "Signing?" I asked quietly. She froze for half a second, a blink, a twitch, just enough to confirm what I already knew. Marcus jumped in quickly. "Yeah, well, paperwork. They needed a guardian's signature." "Guardian?" The word slid out of my mouth like cold metal. He nodded, trying to pretend confidence. "It's standard procedure, Mom. They said you might not fully understand all the documents, so Danielle and I signed on your behalf, like a family should." I let the silence stretch long enough for both of them to shift uncomfortably. Then I smiled, just a little. "I see." They mistook my calmness for surrender, for compliance, for weakening. Danielle clapped her hands once. "Good, great, then let's get moving. I booked us a table at a little diner near the facility so we can grab lunch after dropping you off." Dropping me off, like dry cleaning. Marcus moved toward the front door, suitcase in hand, expecting me to follow, but I didn't move. "Come on, Mom," he insisted. "Don't do this." He set the suitcase down and placed both hands on his hips. "We already planned everything. The home knows you're coming. Your room is paid. Your meals are arranged. We sold some of the old furniture from the rental house yesterday to cover the deposit." I blinked slowly. "You sold furniture?" Danielle nodded proudly. "Yes, from the Blue Door house. Honestly, it was old anyway, and we figured that house is basically ours now since we've been living there. So why not make use of it?" Make use of it. Use my home. Use my work. Use my life. I lifted my gaze to hers, and for the first time, I didn't see my daughter-in-law. I saw a stranger. A stranger wearing the softest smile, the sharpest teeth. Marcus walked back toward me and placed a hand on my shoulder in a rehearsed gesture of compassion. "Mom, please, don't make this dramatic. This is just the next chapter." A chapter they believed they were writing. I stepped back just enough for his hand to fall away. "Marcus," I said quietly, "you need to leave." He blinked. "What?" "You heard me." Danielle let out a nervous laugh. "Evelyn, don't be ridiculous. You can't stay here alone, and everything is already in motion." "I won't tell you twice," I said, voice still level, still steady. "You need to leave my home." Marcus's face reddened. "Your home?" "Mom, you don't even understand." But I held up a hand gently. "I understand more than you think." He grew quiet then, confused, annoyed, but still convinced he was in control. He grabbed his keys again and muttered something to Danielle about giving me space to process. They walked out together, the same confident stride, the same victorious energy, two people who believed they had already won. At the door, Marcus turned back just long enough to say, "We'll be back tomorrow morning, Mom. Please be ready. This is happening." Danielle added, "And don't try anything. We've already handled the paperwork." They drove away, laughing as the car rolled down the driveway. I watched them through the living room window, their silhouettes shrinking under the rising sun. They thought they had succeeded. They thought they had broken me. They thought the house, the estate, the life Harold and I built, all of it, would soon belong to them. But they didn't know what was coming next. They didn't know I had the envelope. They didn't know I had the law. They didn't know I had Harold's foresight wrapped around me like armor. And they absolutely didn't know who they were dealing with now. The next morning, my phone rang at 7:12 a.m. Marcus. I let it ring twice before answering. Not to be dramatic, but to set the tone. "Mom?" His voice was clipped, impatient. "We're leaving in an hour. Are you ready?" I softened my voice, adding a tremble I practiced the night before. "Marcus, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. Maybe we should talk later." There was a pause, the kind people make when they believe they are speaking to someone weaker than them. "Mom," he sighed, "don't start this. We're doing what's best for you." I swallowed visibly even though he couldn't see it. I understand. I just need time." He hung up quickly, assuming he'd won again. But that call wasn't the important one. The important one came 10 minutes later. I picked up the phone, pressed the familiar number, one I hadn't dialed since Harold died, and waited. 3 rings. Then a warm, steady voice answered. "Mrs. Carter? It's been a long time." Attorney Douglas Carter, Harold's friend, not related to us, but as loyal as blood. "Doug," I whispered, "I need help." He didn't ask for details, didn't ask if I was sure, didn't ask if I was emotional or confused or too old to understand, the way Marcus phrased things lately. He simply said, "Tell me what happened." I explained everything slowly. The forged signatures, the nursing home scheme, the way Marcus and Danielle planned to move me out of my home like a piece of luggage, the envelope Harold left me, the clause protecting me. Doug listened without interrupting. When I finished, the line went quiet for a moment. Then he said the words that straightened my spine. "Evelyn, they've broken the law." My breath caught. I thought so. "You thought correctly," he replied, "and Harold protected you better than either of us knew." I felt something loosen inside me, something tight and painful that had been twisting since the moment my son told me he moved me. Doug cleared his throat. "We're going to take this step by step. First, do not sign anything. Second, do not leave your house. And third, let me handle every phone call, every document, and every conversation that involves your care. Understood?" "Yes," I breathed. "And Evelyn," he added, voice firm, "you're not alone in this." After we ended the call, I sat in my living room with the envelope beside me, and for the first time in weeks, the house felt like mine again. Not a place I was being pushed out of, but a fortress I was about to reclaim. But I knew I had to play the long game, a quiet game, a smart woman's game. So I chose silence. I let Marcus and Danielle believe I was helpless. I let them think they still had control. I let them move around like victors, blind to the trap they built around themselves. That afternoon, Danielle called. "Evelyn, it's Danielle," she chimed, sugary sweet. "Do you need help packing? I can come over if you'd like." I forced a small, shaky laugh. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm just so tired. I might need a little more time." "Time?" Her voice sharpened. "Evelyn, the room is paid for. You can't just delay this." I pressed a hand to my forehead for effect, even though she couldn't see me. "I know, dear. I'm sorry. I'm just confused." That was the magic word. Confused. The word manipulators love. A word they assume means easy to control. Danielle's tone softened instantly. "It's okay. I understand. Just rest. We'll handle the hard stuff." Handle. The word of the day. After the call, I went to my small desk and opened the drawer where Harold and I kept our old records. Bank statements, rental agreements, lease contracts, insurance policies. Every document numbered, dated, and filed by Harold's meticulous hands. As I sifted through them, I realized something powerful. My life was documented. My intentions were clear. My ownership was traceable. My rights were undeniable. If Marcus and Danielle wanted to build a case claiming I couldn't live alone, they picked the wrong opponent, because my entire life was proof that I had held families, jobs, businesses, and responsibilities together long before they could spell mortgage. That evening, Doug called again. "I spoke to the county clerk," he said. "Your signature was absolutely forged. And the facility Marcus picked, they never received confirmation from you. That makes their admission paperwork invalid." I swallowed a laugh. Not because it was funny, but because justice has a taste. Sharp, cold, clean. Doug continued, "Tomorrow morning we'll freeze all access Marcus and Danielle have to any property or accounts. Then we'll issue a cease and desist. And after that, we'll let them come to you." "Come to me?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "People who steal always panic when the stealing stops. Let them panic." I sat in silence, letting his words settle. For months, I had felt like the ground was slipping under me, like grief and aging and loneliness were pulling me down into a place I couldn't climb out of. But now the ground felt steady again, and I realized something that made my heart both ache and strengthen. Sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes it is preparation. That night, as the house grew quiet, I whispered into the dim room, "Harold, I'm doing exactly what you told me to." And somewhere inside me, I felt him, not as memory, but as a strength. Tomorrow, the storm would begin, but tonight I let myself rest. The calm before a reckoning. The first crack in their confidence came less than 24 hours later. I was sitting at the dining table sipping my morning coffee when my phone buzzed violently on the wood. Not once, not twice, but 6 times in a row, all from Marcus. I didn't answer. Then the 7th call came. This one from a number I didn't recognize. City Collections Division. I let that one ring too. An hour later, another call. This time, Savannah Property Management. It didn't take long for the dots to connect. Doug had done exactly what he promised. Every access point Marcus and Danielle believed they had to the estate, gone. Every privilege they casually depended on, locked. Every door they assumed would open for them, shut tight. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. Justice doesn't shout. It hums quietly like a distant engine warming up. By noon, there was banging on my front door. 3 hard, panicked knocks, followed by Marcus's voice, louder than I'd heard in years. "Mom, Mom, open up! Something's wrong!" I stayed seated, calm as a stone. "Mom, did you change the locks on the blue door house? We can't get in." Ah, there it was. The blue door house. The rental property I allowed them to live in temporarily because they couldn't afford rent anywhere else. They'd mistaken generosity for ownership, convenience for inheritance. I didn't move toward the door, didn't make a sound. "Mom, the management company won't talk to me. They said I'm not on the account anymore. What's going on?" Panic has a different texture from anger. Anger is hot, sharp, quick. Panic is wet. It drowns the voice, makes it shake. I heard it clearly in Marcus. Before he could knock again, another voice joined him, shrill, frustrated, cracking at the edges. Danielle. "Evelyn, you need to open this door right now. We just got a notice saying our lease has been terminated. Terminated. And they told us we have 30 days to vacate." Her words were frantic, rushed, slipping over each other. "Is this your doing? Why would you evict your own family?" Family. She used that word like a weapon when it suited her. I took a quiet sip of my coffee. They kept ranting, voices tangled in desperation. Eventually, the knocking stopped, replaced with hurried footsteps and the screech of tires pulling out of the driveway. I knew where they were going. Straight to the property management office, trying to demand answers. Doug called me 20 minutes later. "They showed up," he said plainly. I smiled into my mug. I figured. "Oh, they were furious," Doug added. "Security had to escort them out after Danielle started yelling at the clerk. They demanded access to the accounts, insisted the houses belonged to them. But once we showed the deeds..." "Well?" He paused for effect. "They left very quietly." I imagined the moment. Marcus staring at a document with my name on it. Not his, not Harold's, mine. A clean, sharp truth cutting through years of entitlement. But the unraveling wasn't over. That evening, I received a text message from an unknown number. "Danielle's loan defaulted. She's being pursued for fraud." I blinked at the screen. "Fraud?" Doug called again almost the same moment. "Remember Danielle's boutique?" he asked. "The one you quietly funded before Harold passed?" "Yes." She falsified income reports, and the IRS finally caught up. I felt a mixture of sadness and inevitability. People who manipulate small things eventually manipulate bigger things. Danielle had always believed shortcuts were her birthright. "She's in serious trouble," Doug added, "bankruptcy levels of trouble." What he didn't say, but I knew, was that she expected me to rescue her again. She expected me to pay her debts, to fix her mess, to lift her out of the hole she dug with her own hands. Not this time. By the next morning, the final blow landed. Marcus returned to the house, but this time he didn't knock with confidence. He leaned against the door as if the world had gotten too heavy. "Mom." His voice cracked. "We lost everything." I didn't open the door. Not yet. He kept talking through the wood. "The bank froze our account. Danielle can't pay her credit cards. They're saying we owe 3 months of back rent on the Blue Door house, and..." His voice broke. "And Danielle left." Left. I closed my eyes, not out of happiness, but out of the quiet ache of seeing consequences fall exactly where they belonged. Marcus exhaled a shuddering breath. "Mom, I don't know what to do." That was the first honest thing he had said in months. I stood slowly, walked toward the door, placed my palm lightly against the wood between us. But I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I said softly, just loud enough for him to hear, "Come back tonight." And then I walked away. Because some lessons require solitude. Some truths need silence. And some falls must be felt fully before a person can rise again. Marcus had hit the ground, hard, and for the first time, he understood exactly what he had almost thrown away. Marcus didn't come back at sunset. He came long after the sky had gone dark, close to 10:40 p.m., when the neighborhood was silent and the crickets were the only witnesses alive. The knock on the door wasn't loud this time. It was small, hesitant, a child's knock, not a grown man's. I walked to the door and opened it, and there he was, My son, 42 years old, shoulders slumped forward like someone had emptied the bones from inside him. His eyes were swollen, his shirt wrinkled, his breath unsteady. He held a small duffel bag at his feet, the kind you grab when you've left somewhere in a hurry and don't know where you're going next. "Mom," his voice cracked, "can I stay here? Just for tonight?" I stepped aside without a word. He walked in slowly, like the house itself was judging him. When he set the bag down, he couldn't look at me. His chest shook once, then twice. The beginnings of a sob he tried to swallow. He wiped his face with the back of his sleeve. "Danielle's gone," he whispered. "She said she can't be with someone who has nothing." I didn't say, "I warned you." I didn't say, "I told you what she was." I didn't even say her name. Instead, I pointed toward the dining table. "Sit down." He obeyed. His hands shook as he folded them together on the table. I placed a plate of leftover cornbread in front of him and a glass of cold water. He stared at the food as if he hadn't eaten in days. "Mom," he said in a broken whisper, "I'm sorry." I pulled out the chair across from him but didn't sit immediately. I let the silence thicken until he finally met my eyes. "For what?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "For everything." I lowered myself into the chair, steady and calm. "You're going to need to be more specific." His breath hitched. "For trying to move you, for forging your name, for thinking." His voice trembled. "Thinking you were in the way." There it was, the truth, unclothed and shivering. I didn't cry. Grief had already burned those tears out of me months ago. Instead, I spoke gently, the way you speak to someone who finally sees the wreckage they caused. "Marcus, when did you forget who raised you? When did you forget what love looks like?" He covered his face with both hands, elbows on the table, shoulders shaking. "I messed everything up," he sobbed. "I messed up my marriage, my money, my life, my relationship with you." "No," I corrected quietly. "You didn't mess up your relationship with me, you broke it." He let out a trembling breath. "Can it be fixed?" I looked at him long and deeply. The little boy who used to run to me with scraped knees, the teenager who built birdhouses with Harold, the grown man who let greed and convenience replace gratitude. "It depends," I said softly, "on what you're willing to learn." He lifted his head, eyes red. "I'll do anything." Anything. People only say that when they have nothing left to bargain with. "Good," I answered, "because you're going to start over." He blinked. "Start over?" "Yes," I said, "from the bottom." He straightened, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means," I explained slowly, "you're going to work, real work, honest work. Whatever job hires you, whatever schedule they give you, you're going to earn your own food, your own clothes, your own transportation, and you are not going to depend on me to fix what you broke." His mouth parted. "Mom, I raised a hand, calm but firm. "You told me I couldn't manage my own life. Now you'll prove you can manage yours." He swallowed, stunned and quiet. "You will live here," I continued, "but only on the condition that you contribute. You will clean. You will cook some nights. You will pay what you can, even if it's $20 a week. You will learn how to be dependable." Tears filled his eyes again. You're kicking me into a lesson." "No," I said softly. "I'm lifting you into one." He dropped his gaze to his hands. "I don't know if anyone will hire me." "They will," I assured him. "And if the only job available is cleaning floors at midnight, then that's where you'll start." He nodded slowly. Reality hurts when it's honest. I stood. "Come on, let me get you a blanket." His voice followed me, small and uncertain. "Mom, thank you for letting me stay." I didn't respond right away. I opened the linen closet, pulled out a quilt Harold's mother had made by hand, and returned to him. When I placed the quilt on the table beside him, I leaned down just enough to meet his eyes. "I'm letting you stay," I said gently, "because you're my son. But I'm not saving you. Not this time. His face crumpled, not from pain, but from recognition. Recognition that the woman he underestimated had become the mirror he needed. Later, after he fell asleep on the couch, I stood on the porch wrapped in my robe, looking at the magnolia tree swaying in the night breeze. The moonlight painted the petals silver, and in that moment, I whispered into the quiet, "Harold, he's learning." Because growth, like justice, isn't loud, it is slow, it is humbling, and it begins with the long fall before the climb. The first week was the hardest. Marcus woke up on my couch every morning with stiff bones and a restless mind, the kind of restlessness that comes from having no direction and no excuses left. He would sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I brewed before dawn, staring at the steam like it was trying to tell him something. One morning, he looked at me with tired eyes. "Mom, where do I even start?" "Anywhere," I replied. "Start anywhere that will have you." He nodded slowly and opened his laptop. Job applications, job boards, job portals I knew he used to laugh at. By noon, he had applied to 12 positions: warehouses, delivery services, hotel maintenance, and grocery store stocking. Jobs he once thought were beneath him. By the third day, the rejections began. "We've filled the position." "You're overqualified." "Your credit history doesn't meet our standards." "Your background check raises concerns." Every no chipped something off him. Not pride, that had already crumbled, but certainty. By the end of the week, he stopped wearing his nice shirts and switched to plain t-shirts, as if dressing down could lower expectations enough to help him fit somewhere. On the 7th day, he finally got a call. A warehouse outside Savannah needed a night shift associate, someone to unload trucks, move pallets, and clean aisles from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Marcus looked at me like they'd offered him prison. "They want me there tonight," he said quietly. 10 o'clock. I stirred the pot of chicken stew on the stove. "Then you should go." He opened his mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to complain, maybe to ask for comfort I wasn't going to provide, but he swallowed it all down and nodded. That night, when he walked out with his backpack slung over his shoulder, he paused at the door. "Mom, will you be awake when I get back?" "I'll be here," I said, not promising more than that. He left into the cold night. I stood by the window and watched him walk down the driveway. Not a confident stride, but a humbled one, a learning one. At 6:22 a.m., the door creaked open. He walked inside like a man carrying an invisible weight. His shirt was stained, his hands covered in warehouse dust, and his face was drained of color. "How was it?" I asked gently. He swallowed. Hard, really hard. A long pause. "But the supervisor said I did well." Those simple words, "I did good," softened something in the room. He showered, ate the breakfast I made, and collapsed onto the couch to sleep. I covered him with the quilt from Harold's mother, smoothing it over him the way I used to when he was little. But this time, I didn't tuck him in. This time, I let the air of responsibility settle around him without my hands shaping it. Over the next few weeks, a rhythm formed in the house. Marcus slept during the day, worked through the night, and spent the in-between hours paying debts he had ignored for years. He made phone calls to creditors, arranged payment plans, apologized to clerks and managers he had once snapped at. One afternoon, I overheard him on the phone. "Yes, ma'am. I know I fell behind. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking for a chance." Those words were not in Marcus's old vocabulary. They were new, earned. At the end of each week, he placed a small envelope on the kitchen counter. $20, he said the first week, almost embarrassed. The next week, 35. Then, 40. "Whatever you can is enough," I told him. "It isn't," he answered quietly, "but it's a start." Then came the turning point. One night, he returned from work with a thoughtful expression I hadn't seen in years. "Mom," he said, sitting across from me, "I met someone on my shift, Mrs. Johnson." "Who is she?" "She works the floor scrubber. She's 74. I raised an eyebrow. 74? Working a warehouse night shift? He nodded slowly. She said she doesn't have family to help her. She just does what she has to do. Mom, she's tougher than me. Kinder, too. What did she teach you? I asked. He looked down at his hands that had never worked this hard in his life. She said, life doesn't owe you ease. It owes you an opportunity. What you do with it is on you. A long silence settled between us. Mom, I've been blaming you, blaming Dad, blaming the world. And all this time, his voice cracked. All this time, I should have been looking at myself. I nodded once, a small gesture, but he caught it. There is a moment in every grown child's life when they finally understand the labor their parents carried without glory, without applause, without complaint. Marcus had reached that moment. In the 4th week, something unexpected happened. He found an old wooden box in the attic, a small one Harold used to store keepsakes. Inside, it was a dusty velvet pouch containing a few pieces of jewelry and a vintage watch. Dad's things, Marcus whispered. I forgot these existed. He turned the items over in his hands, held them gently, then looked at me. Mom, these could cover one of my debts, but I don't want to sell them. I touched his arm. Then don't. He shook his head. No, I need to fix what I broke. I need to learn the cost of my mistakes. The next day, he sold the watch, not because he wanted to, but because he needed to, and the receipt he placed on the table afterward trembled slightly in his fingers. Not pain, not pride, responsibility. By the end of 6 weeks, the man sleeping on my couch wasn't the same man who had tried to uproot me from my own home. His voice softened, his shoulders lowered, his anger quieted, his entitlement cracked apart piece by piece, replaced by humility. And every night he returned from work covered in sweat and dust and the tired dignity of hard labor, he whispered the same sentence before going to bed. Mom, I'm trying. And for the first time in years, I believed him. 8 weeks after Marcus moved back into my home, Doug called and said it was time. Bring him in, he told me. He's earned the truth. So I waited until Marcus got home from his shift, 6:19 a.m., sweat on his collar, exhaustion in his shoulders, and poured him a cup of hot tea. He wrapped his hands around the mug and stared into the steam like it was a small break from the weight he carried. Marcus, I said gently, we need to go somewhere today. He blinked. Where? To see Doug. His face tightened with anxiety. Not fear of punishment, but fear of disappointing me again. Still, he nodded. After he showered and changed, we drove to Doug's office, a small brick building tucked behind an insurance agency. The hallway smelled of old carpet and lemon-scented cleaner. When we entered Doug's office, he stood and greeted us with a firm handshake. Marcus, he said evenly, have a seat. Marcus nodded, his voice low. Yes, sir. Doug opened a thick file, thicker than any file should be, and placed it on the desk between us. I watched Marcus's eyes flicker, confusion settling into his features. Before we begin, Doug said, I want to ask you something. Marcus straightened in his chair. What is it? Doug folded his hands. Do you understand what you did to your mother? Marcus didn't answer right away. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. Yes, he said finally. I tried to take her choices away. I tried to move her out of her own home. I let Danielle talk me into something terrible, and I thought I was entitled to things I didn't earn. Doug nodded once. Good. You needed to say it out loud. Then Doug turned to me. Evelyn? I took a slow breath and placed the brown envelope on the desk, the same envelope Harold had given me years ago. Marcus stared at it, recognition flickering in his eyes like a half-remembered dream. Mom. What's that? He whispered. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I opened the envelope quietly, pulling out the documents with care. The deed, the will, the protective clause. Harold's letter. I slid them toward him one by one. Marcus picked up the deed first, his brow furrowed. This is Mom's name, only Mom's. He flipped to the second page, confusion deepening. Then he saw the will. I watched the moment it hit him, the moment the world he assumed existed cracked down the middle. Dad. His voice trembled. Dad put everything in your name? Yes, I said softly. Marcus's fingers shook as he lifted the document again. His eyes scanned the protective clause, the legal wall Harold built around me long before Marcus ever imagined taking control. This clause says, I can't make decisions for you. Not now, not ever. That's right, Doug replied. And the nursing home paperwork, he swallowed hard. That was illegal, all of it. Doug nodded. Every page, every signature, every attempt to force your mother into a facility. Marcus leaned back in his chair, eyes glistening, hands trembling. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know Dad did all this. I met his eyes, tired, red, wounded. You didn't know, I said, because you didn't look. He closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek. Mom, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you show me these documents the moment I tried to move you out? Why did you let me fall so hard? My breath caught, not because of guilt, but because of the truth buried inside his question. Because if I saved you too early, I said quietly, you would have stayed the same. He lifted his head slowly, his eyes locked onto mine, raw, pleading, humbled. I needed you to feel the consequences, I continued, not out of cruelty, out of love, real love, not the love that rescues every mistake, but the love that lets you face yourself. Marcus covered his face with his hands. I let him cry, really cry. Not the angry tears from weeks ago, but the tears of a son who finally saw the damage his choices carved into the people who raised him. Mom, he choked, I'm so ashamed. I reached out and placed my hand over his, not to comfort the shame out of him, but to let him know I was still here, still steady, still his mother. Shame is not the end, I said softly. It's the doorway to change. He looked up again, jaw trembling. Why didn't you hate me, after everything I did to you? Because you're my child, I answered, and because Harold believed you'd find your way back, but only if you got lost first. That broke him. His shoulders shook, his breath hitched, his chest caved inward like his heart was folding into itself. Doug cleared his throat gently. There's something else you should know. Your debts have been settled. Marcus blinked. What? Doug nodded. Paid in full, every dollar. He stared at me, eyes widening with disbelief. Mom, did you? Yes, I said. I did. Why? His voice cracked. Why would you save me after everything? I held his gaze, steady, calm, unflinching. Because saving you at the beginning would have ruined you, I said, but saving you at the end would rebuild you. Silence filled the room, heavy, sacred, honest. Marcus lowered his head, tears dripping onto the papers that bore the truth of everything he had misunderstood. Mom, he whispered, I will never, ever do something like that again. I squeezed his hand gently. I know. For the first time in years, I saw my son. Not the entitled man, not the reckless husband, not the panicked victim of his own choices, but the boy I raised, the man he still had a chance to become. In that quiet office with Harold's handwriting glowing faintly under the fluorescent light, Marcus learned what love truly was. Not soft, not blind, not unconditional in the way people misinterpret. Real love is correction. Real love is accountability. Real love lets consequences teach what comfort never could. And in that moment, we both understood. This was not the end of our relationship. It was the beginning of a new one. 6 months later, the house felt different. Not because the furniture had changed or the walls had new paint. They didn't. The change was quieter, deeper, something you could feel only if you lived inside it long enough to sense how the air itself had shifted. It was peace, a peace I had not felt since before Harold got sick. And it wasn't because life became easier. It was because the people inside my life finally became honest. Marcus no longer slept on the couch. About 8 weeks after our meeting with Doug, he came to me one morning, freshly showered after his night shift, smelling faintly of detergent and metal dust, and said, "Mom, I want to rent a room from you, not stay for free, rent." I looked up from my coffee, surprised by both the request and the tone behind it. Steady, grounded, a tone that came from a man, not a boy. "How much can you afford?" I asked. He pulled an envelope from his pocket, clean, uncrumpled, labeled in his handwriting. "I did the math," he said. "Utilities, groceries, rent. I can manage $300 a month, but if that's not enough..." "It's enough," I told him. He exhaled, relief softening his shoulders. "I want to earn my place here," he said quietly, "not take it." And that was the moment I knew he was changing for real. Not for show, not from panic, but from principle. His job at the warehouse became something steady, not temporary. He started staying after shifts to help the older workers lift heavy crates, even without being asked. He took advice from the supervisors, volunteered for extra training modules, and eventually was given a new role, inventory coordinator. Not a promotion, he told me, but a step up. He smiled when he said it, a genuine smile, the kind that grows from effort, not entitlement. Then one night he came home and said, "Mom, they want me to help train the new hires. Can you believe that?" I could, because this version of him was someone worth learning from. Meanwhile, life pulled me towards something unexpected. I kept thinking about the envelope, Harold's handwriting, his warning, and the realization that not every woman in my shoes had been protected the way he protected me. A lot of older women, and especially black women, and in our community, had no one to defend them. No lawyer, no financial literacy, no legal backup, no Harold in their corner, and that thought sat heavy on me. So one afternoon, I went to the community center and asked the director if they had programs for senior women dealing with financial abuse from family. She sighed. Not enough. Definitely not enough. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and sketched out an idea on the back of a grocery receipt, the Magnolia Foundation, support for older women facing family financial exploitation, named after the magnolia tree in my backyard, the tree that survived storms, just like us. Within a month, I partnered with 2 social workers, one retired attorney and a pastor's wife who had been quietly helping abused seniors for years. We hosted workshops on recognizing financial manipulation, seminars on legal rights, and even support circles for women forced into homes they didn't choose. The first meeting had 6 women, the next had 13. By month 3, we had 41. I watched them walk in with lowered shoulders and walk out with lifted chins. Harold would have loved that. Marcus began attending some workshops too, not as a participant, but as a volunteer. He helped set up chairs, carry boxes, fix flickering lights, and serve refreshments. And more than once, I caught him listening closely when survivors shared their stories. One evening, after a session about forged signatures, he pulled me aside. "Mom," he said softly, "I was them. I was the one hurting you. You were lost," I corrected, "and you found your way back." He looked down. "Only because you let me fall." "Yes," I said, "and only because you chose to rise." 6 months passed like that, slowly, gently, without drama, a quiet rebuilding of the world we almost lost. Then one morning, Marcus knocked on my bedroom door. "Mom," he said, "I want to show you something." He handed me a folded paper, freshly signed, notarized, a lease agreement, for a small apartment near the warehouse. "It's time I stand on my own again," he said, And I want you to know, this time I'm standing right." I looked at him, truly looked, and felt Harold's spirit in the room, warm and proud. "You're ready," I whispered. He hugged me, the first long, tight hug since he was a teenager. "Mom," he murmured, "thank you for not giving up on me." I held his face in my hands. "I didn't save you," I said gently. "You saved yourself. I just let the truth do its job." He smiled, not with his mouth, but with his whole being. That afternoon I walked out into the yard and stood beneath the magnolia tree. Its branches swayed softly, full and green. A summer breeze brushed my cheeks, warm and forgiving. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Harold, he's good. We're good." Then I looked back at the house, my sanctuary, and felt a peace settle around my shoulders like a shawl. A peace built from boundaries, a peace earned through truth, a peace shaped by love, the real kind, the kind that doesn't avoid pain, but uses it to grow. And standing under that magnolia tree, I finally understood something. Sometimes the family you save becomes the family that saves others,